Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have a sharp game to share with you from round 4 of the 2025 FIDE World Cup. This was played today, November 11th, on the white end, Praggnanandhaa playing against Daniil Dubov. Alright, this is game 1 of 2, classical time controls. Ruy Lopez. We're in for a sharp continuation out of this opening. Once e4 is secure, this is an idea. Now's the time to release the pressure on the knight. Castle and c3 here welcomes the martial attack, and we see just that with d5. He takes d, knight takes d, and from here white plays h3. A cautious approach. The most popular continuation is to accept the pawn out of the martial attack by capturing on e5, this line right here. Note in this position, knight f4 does not go anywhere. d4 is there, the knight is immediately challenged. The play here is with c6, then there's a d-pawn advance, or maybe the rook falls back voluntarily. In response to all three of those white moves, bishop d6 is there, and you start pointing at the king side, queen h4 nearby, provoking weaknesses all while the queen side pieces remain on home base. Okay, not the path we go down. White does not go after e5. It's h3, bishop b7, and from here a4 is played. Now, if we revisit the capture on e5 with the bishop on b7 rather than home base, white is lost. So let's examine this briefly. Knight f4 in this position is crushing. Carries two very serious threats, g2 under fire, as well as the dominant knight post on d3, blockading the d-pawn, effectively restricting white's entire queenside. Okay, this is a winning position for black. My point, the e-pawn is poisoned with the bishop on b7 rather than c8. From here we have a4, knight b6. What to do about that a-pawn? We have here a5. Knight is kicked. In this case, it drops back to d7, securing e5 directly. Now, if white captures on b5 and then captures on a8, notice that there is still a problem with this g2 point. We revisit the capture on e5 in this position. Okay, you can address the threat on the bishop with bishop to f6. And next up, there is bishop captures g2. Okay, that's a big pawn to give up, 2-point pawn. So white's reaction here is not to open up the a file. Gives the knight a kick to d7. From here, d3 is played. Computer prefers d4 with the top line pawn takes, knight b4, looking next at a pawn break. If d4 was played and e4 is the response, this would not be a good idea. Not because of rook captures pawn, that would be bad, but because of knight f to d2, targeting this point, which has no defenders, twice. And there wouldn't be a great way to hang on to it. f5 is illegal. There's a line here where after knight f to d2, knight f6, it says pile up at that stage. On e4, it will end up falling. The problem in this position with capturing on e4, there's this tactic, knight captures a5. It is a line that runs quite deep. If rook captures knight, bishop captures rook is there. And if rook captures bishop, there's knight captures bishop. Both rooks are hanging. And if this rook collects a knight, in the end, there's going to be a big problem for the white king side. This is a lost position for white. Good luck surviving this. Okay, in this game we do not see d4, it's d3, king h8, and now white goes ahead and plays d4. Computer doesn't like d4 at this moment. It prefers bishop d5. Okay, d4 at this moment, what might attract a player, white here, to playing d4 with the king on h8 rather than g8? It could be that white is sensing this point is going to be a liability. The rook is not always going to want to have that responsibility to babysit this pawn, probably want to be on an open file at some stage. This point would then lack some support, could be a tactical liability. So white is choosing this moment to sort of stir up trouble now in the center. Black's reaction here is e4, and white plays to h2 here, knight h2. Same tactics are there. If rook captures pawn, knight captures a5. So it's knight h2 in this position. Playing here in that position, there would be f5. The pawn at this stage is unpinned. So the approach here is knight h2, f5, knight d2, and let me throw this position to you as a pop quiz. How would you respond here? Pause the video if you'd like. Okay, black plays bishop d6 here. It's a healthy move, no doubt. Pointing at the king side, open line for the queen. In response to bishop d6, f3 is played, challenging that invasive pawn. Here's how the evil computer wants to play it. Queen e8. Now check this line out. If white now challenges this pawn with f3, it says go to h4. You're on the rook, and careful where you go with the rook. Rook f1 runs into e3. Knight moves, there's e2, that's going to sting. And if rook e2, it says knight e7. You ready for this continuation from here? After the dust settles on this e4 square, there is bishop f2 check, and now knight f5. Wow. Don't take the queen. You're going to get mated. It says here rook g4, drop the knight in, and you're going to be up the exchange there. What a continuation. Okay. We don't have queen to e8 at this moment. It's the more human move. Bishop d6, f3, knight improvement, bishop c2, bishop g3, rook e2, and now e3. All right, from here we have knight d to f1. This last move is very slick. This point is ready to collapse. If you're taking here, I mean, squares open up for multiple pieces. The bishop's eyes open up. If you're allowing this capture, these two squares are opening up for multiple, for many of the white pieces. e3 makes life difficult here for white. Don't have access to f3 or e4. White's response again is knight d2, f2. What happens if white captures on e3? Well, the knight will basically teleport to f4. You can get to d5 with tempo. Computer from here is saying best is to give up the exchange. Knight b3. If you don't want to give up the exchange, okay, you're going to have to go to one of these light squares. And in both cases, the knight gets to go to f4 with tempo. And if you want to continue trying to save this material, queen g5 is winning. Deadly idea to take the knight, checkmate next, or even knight captures h3, followed by queen captures rook. Okay, white not interested in capturing the pawn. We have knight d to f1. Another pop quiz. How would you respond here? Pause the video if you'd like. Okay, very instructive moment here. My initial thought was to insert a check and only then glue in or protect this passed pawn. There's an issue with this path. In the game, we have bishop captures knight. If you insert the check and then play f4, white gives up the exchange and then tracks the f pawn, the f4 pawn, and eventually the f2 pawn. White is for choice here. Very good coordination, nice control over the weak squares on the king side by this knight. Bishop g3, bishop captures f2 is nearby. Okay, black sensing this possibility of an exchange sacrifice if bishop f2 and f4 gives up the bishop for knight, and only now plays f4. Follow up, queen d3, restriction on the knight, knight e7, improving moves from here. Meanwhile, white now works with queenside majority. There is, after all, a 4-on-3. Going to get going here in the center. Knight g6, bishop a3, rook f7, c4, b takes c, b takes c. Follow up is bishop c8. Computer doesn't like this. At the top, it prefers the following arrangement. It says improve this knight to h5, and after knight g4, hop into g3, target the rook, and by having the knight on g3 rather than f6, this paves the way for queen h4. And there's a lot of stuff going on. The queen is definitely functioning like a queen. Possible tricks on e1 if this rook goes elsewhere, not on the back rank. Contact point here on h3, f3 as well. And let's add one more to the list. The queen does have a defensive role. Watches over h7 means, because she watches over h7, it means that this knight on g6 is back at full strength. So knight e5 in this position, you could take the knight. You are parrying the mate threat on h7. Okay, it likes this arrangement here for black. Queen h4, knight g3. Black doesn't come up with this, and instead plays the underdeveloping bishop c8, knight g4, knight h5, knight e5, poison, got the mate, rook under fire, rook f6. Another pop quiz. What's your move here? Pause the video if you'd like. Okay, there is a bolt out of the blue available to white. He does not find it. The top move here, in fact, the only move to stay in the game, calls it around equal after this, is bishop to e7. Wow. Let's see what's going on with bishop e7. First of all, you can't take with the knight. There is a fork here. What's the problem if you take with the queen? Well, there is this silent and somewhat deadly move, queen e4 now. A move that carries two very serious threats. Queen captures rook, as well as knight captures knight check, removing the defender of the queen. Queen captures queen to follow. Wow. Okay. It's saying from here, best moves are queen e6 or to go back home, allowing queen captures rook. And then knight takes, pawn takes, rook back to f8, calls that equal. Okay. White in the end does not come up with this only move. Plays instead rook d1, knight g3, rook e to e1, and bishop to f5. Queen c3. Follow up from here is bishop captures bishop. Computer's drawn to knight h4. Okay, likes knight h4, and if bishop captures bishop, it likes this recapture with the rook. Follow-up plan, queen g5, and from there, there's already some tricks in the air. Rook captures knight, knight captures f3, knight e4 with the discovered check. It's very dangerous. These two knights very dangerous on their own, but add the queen to the mix there on g5. There's going to be some tactic. All right, black does not play. Knight h4 initiates the exchange on c2. Queen e8. Bishop reposition. Rook a. Well, the only rook that can go there. Rook d8. Little update here with the clocks. We are 33 moves into this one. Both players are under 5 minutes. Praggnanandhaa has about 3 minutes, and Dubov has about 5. There is still an increment here, 30-second increment. We continue with bishop c3, h5, knight exchange, queen stay on, d5. From here, white has a pretty clear plan. It's 2-1 majority. Start advancing it. Also, this square has opened up. For the rook, bishop's eyes open up as well. Follow-up is queen f7. And next, we have rook d4. Keep some pressure on this pawn. Now, with queen f7, I was a little curious about this idea to advance. With c5, this is not a good idea here. If you play c5, the winning way is not with rook captures pawn. In the end, you would be hanging this rook. What black has in this position is knight f5. And now there are 2 threats. Now you are ready to successfully crash through on d5 and play knight h4, and this is going to be a very big problem. You're on g2 and f3 there. g2 pawn pinned, f3 we could say, after knight f5 is unprotected. My point, c5, not a good idea. We have instead rook d4 interfering, or at least trying here to interfere with this knight reposition, knight f5, rook captures f4. Okay. In the game, we have rook g5, queen freed from this defensive role, and some pressure on d5. Not so fast. With c5, d5 will drop. Follow-up is rook b1, rook e8, queen d3. Pop quiz, how would you respond here? Pause the video if you'd like. Okay, Dubov spent about 3 minutes here and did not come up with the winning tactical idea. He ends up playing queen f5 here. We see a queen exchange, a queenless ending that's considered drawn. This was the winning way. Really beautiful line. Knight f5. You're on the rook. You do mask the queen. Let's say this pawn is picked up. There's this shot on g2 now. And what would you do? We'll see what happens if king captures rook. Let's say it's declined, however. Best is to fall back to defend the knight. I tested out this line here, knight check, king takes rook, queen takes rook, queen g6 in the end is winning for white. Rook hit, mate one threat, knight hit. There isn't an answer to these problems. What black has in this position where the rook is not captured, you go to g5. Now you are setting up this idea. This is considered a winning position for black. There's also ideas of maybe queen g6 if the king is stepping up here. Okay. What's the story if the rook is captured with this line? Well, there's queen g6 check. Beautiful geometry here. Knight on light. Where do you go with the king at this point? You go to light. There's a knight move with check, and the queen falls. unprotected queen. And if the king goes to h2, there's queen g3 check, pawn falls with check. King here, we got mate. The rook falls in the end. This is a winning position for black. Too much to handle. Knight, fantastic here. No problems on g7. Pass pawn to work with. Lost for white. Okay, what a big moment in this round 4. Big moment in this game here. After queen d3. Doesn't come up with knight f5. It's queen f5. We see a queen exchange. Rook recapturing has a responsibility. Follow-up is rook b2. Draw offer was made and accepted. This one here ends peacefully after all of that. Now, I was a little curious if this played out some. If this pawn advances, you are inviting the king to play a role in trying to reel in this pawn. Bishop e1 could also be a move, maybe looking to simply blockade the pawn for a bit. You're somewhat helping out the king if you advance this pawn. If you take a different approach, I was a little curious about this line right here where the knight is removed, and in the end, this rook looks to get activated, not just yet, only after the king blockades the pawn. Here's the thing. In this position, if this rook collects this pawn, black gets activated, and this is going to be very difficult to handle. So there are some pitfalls, in short, if this rook, white's rook here, tries to get going here, collecting pawns. You just need one rook activated, and this pawn could fall. Very dangerous G pawn. There are some risks, to be sure. Okay, at the end of the day, this one is a peaceful result after rook b2. Your thoughts with this one? Feel free as usual to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.